Hi everyone, I'm Martin Bald. I'm the community manager at Wallaroo Labs, and we are a ML production series startup. You've probably seen some of our other videos on our channel. We do tech talks every couple of weeks, but we're taking a little bit of different spin here today, and we have a special guest from the Microsoft MVP world, Tim Huckaby. And I'll let Tim, if you want to introduce yourself to the folks.
Yeah, sure. It's funny you mentioned the Microsoft MVP world, RD world. We were just kidding before we hit record
Yeah,
about how I live in this new world that is not Microsoft at all. But yeah, so I've been, let's see, as a young man, I worked on a product team, a server team at Microsoft in the late 90s, Windows NT for those of you out there who have gray hair and remember that OS, 65 million lines of code. I worked in actually the NT ecosystem on a product called Site Server, but I also worked on NT Option Pack, which was the first IAS server. I worked on the first directory service at Microsoft, which is the father to Active Directory. Anyways, I was a dev lead on an architecture team. And literally that experience working there in Redmond, Washington launched my career. And it's not because of the technical thing or proving myself. It's just kind of that I met so many people,
yeah.
many of which, and work with so many people, many of which started about the same time as me and now are either running Microsoft
Mhm.
as their EVPs,
Yeah.
or they left and they're running Google or Meta or Amazon, right? I've accumulated this grouping of great friends over the years, and yeah, it's been a fun ride. I'm still a technical guy, and I still love software, so that's me.
Awesome. Awesome. That's good to hear. And yeah, as a ex-Microsoft person myself, yeah, that's the thing. It's the pace of the work that you do, but also the brain trust of the people that you work with is that's in the relationships you build, right? Those friendships, they don't go away when you leave the company. Those are sort of lifetime friendships, and so yeah, just the some of the smart people that you meet is just like incredible.
Yeah, yeah. It is funny that it's so timely because I just announced this new role, this CTO role that I took at this startup in LinkedIn, and I told my wife, like, "Oh my God, I think made a mistake because I've got like 500 replies, congratulations, and of all these people through the years that I have to catch up with now." It's been honestly, it's been a full-time job just catching up with all these people over the years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've had a fun ride, and it's still fun every day. And as you know, few folks know, I have been lucky in my career in a number of points. Not the least of which is I was the demo boy for a lot of Microsoft executives at large conferences all over the world. In fact, Microsoft has sent me all over the world for Bill Gates, Steve Ballmer, and all the other ones. So that was fun too. But now I'm a CTO at a startup, and that's exciting too.
Yeah, so tell us a wee bit about this startup, what you're doing and what the company do.
Well, sure, sure. And I'll try to make it short because I tend to talk about it a lot because it's so new and I'm finding out so much. First, I should say I'm in charge of implementing the artificial intelligence in this software product, which is totally fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely going to be a hoot of fun and a blast. This company is in its infancy, even though they've been around for about a year. They're in revenue. Their name is LuciHub, LuciHub.com, and they produce professional quality product placement videos. They do the actual production of the videos. So the beautiful thing, Martin, and you'll relate to this, is I get to work with all these creatives. I've been working with engineers my whole life, and it's fun. And I know how to relate to engineers. I think I'm a good engineering manager. But creatives are so fun to work with because they think so differently. So there's some Hollywood people in this company, and they have figured out with a piece of software, they've got through a year with an offshore team, in their brilliance, have figured out how to automate the production of like a Nike commercial. The problem with doing a Nike commercial, which I have recently learned over the last year, is that it takes a ton of money and
Yeah.
it takes at least 6 weeks to produce.
Okay.
Many times much longer. Well, the bold promise of this company, and ultimately in their mission statement, is, you know, a quarter of the price in 1 to 3 days.
Right.
And if you think it through, or your readers think it through, or if you've ever made a video, or if you're going to edit this thing, like if I was going to, you know, slip up and say the F word or something like that, and you had to edit it out, right? It's complicated. It takes time.
Yeah.
But you could totally see a path where, especially computer vision part of AI, could automate the process of producing the content.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you're going to have a human, just like AI to me aren't weapons of destruction. They're tools that help people do their jobs faster. So ultimately, you have humans involved at the end. But you can imagine using a verbal interface to the software, saying, well, let's take a not a product placement video, but something easier to get your arms around, like a wedding video. Wedding videos are very expensive if you're the father of the bride. And they take 6 weeks to produce, right? But imagine telling the computer, line up all the content at the cake cutting. I want 65% of the content to be bride and groom.
Right.
We want to minimize the drunken mean grandma, right? So only 2%, you know, that type of stuff, lining all that stuff up on the timeline, that's wildly powerful. And at the same time, another bold promise, and now I've already gone too long talking about this amazing company, is that they allow the customer to create their own content. So you don't need professional videographers or photographers.
Right.
These magical iPhones, these are so good these days.
Yeah.
You know, they have simple training videos, and their own customers actually add content to the product placement video. It's really kind of cool, and I just love the people. So yeah, that's my new gig.
I mean, that sounds cool. I think, how do you sort of, how do they, go about building that model, from scratch? What sort of testing are you going through and experimentation?
So you're leading me like a puppy,
Oh,
which is brilliant of you, Martin.
thank
So yeah, I don't want to break NDA, and I'm not going to break NDA.
you.
But if you put two and two together, this super smart CEO, who is technical, has an idea that, you know, if we could pull it off technically, is going to be earth shattering.
Yeah.
And as you well know, because of where you are in the world right now, once if you produce a machine learning algorithm, there's nothing static about it. The frustration of my last, I don't know, decade of work in AI is working with, say, business people who don't understand that once you train that model and put it in production, it's not over.
Yeah.
You know, these are learning, growing things, and they have to be maintained like a piece of software, blah, 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 blah. So that's where our careers will intersect next is, you know, I've got to put together a requirements doc or an RFP or something like that to build literally a jaw-dropping piece of AI software in this world.
Yeah.
And you could put two and two together what it would do.
Yeah.
Again, there'll always be humans involved, but you know, this could really be groundbreaking. So yeah, but you know, then it goes from startup to holy shit, we need a ton of people or software tools to maintain this monster, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
there.
and I think, because I mean, we're in the production stage, and so, for us, it's that, like you said, it doesn't end with the model deployment, right? Like you've got to go through validation. Like you said, your model will change, new ideas and, innovations will come up. And then, how do you, the challenge for any company is then how do we keep that model viable to the business and keeping that ROI coming back? And then you've got elements of drift as well, for certain sort of use cases. And in that respect, it's how do we make sure that we're efficient and effective with that? Like, have you come across that in your sort of previous work, and companies that think, oh great, we're deployed, no, you're not.
Oh, it's worse than that, Martin. And now that I think back, with this gray hair on my head, to my first programming class in the 80s.
Yeah,
The professor's name, I actually remember, Dr. Dwight Beaton, and he said, a piece of software is never done.
yeah,
And that resonated me for an entire career. But it's even more true now than it was back then,
yeah,
because the tools, plumbing, and platform, it, a an ML algorithm, or just say it's a something in computer vision, it can always get better. The best companies I know of are building every day.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, even the GPT thing,
yeah.
even that large learning model, that they're literally building every day
Mhm.
on a gazillion high-powered computers.
Yeah,
God knows how they're paying for it, but they're building every day. Can you imagine managing that nightmare? Oh my goodness.
yeah,
From your world, that's who you guys need as a customer. Actually, they should just acquire you guys. I cannot imagine how complicated on the DevOps, MLOps side it is for that particular piece of software, and for all the large learning models we have coming.
yeah,
That's a great example of something that isn't static. You don't put it into production and say, "Oh, go," because information continues, right? Information doesn't stop. You still got to learn this stuff. The same goes for a different world like computer vision, where I come from.
yeah,
There's always going to be more information, better content to learn on, and tech. With Moore's law, it just
yeah.
continues to go like this. So you're forced to make these things
Mhm.
live, livable things. In my career, my frustration points, especially in the last decade, were with CEO types that just said, "Oh, you made a prototype? Let's slam it in production and call it good." Like, wait.
Yeah, we've got, we put out a couple of, computer vision tutorials as well, the videos and that. And so, and then we just put out, I'm in the process of recording a video for like medical health imaging, for that. And so we're using mitochondria detection. But yeah, the computer vision space, and everyone's talking about LLMs, right? But the computer vision space is just, also moving by leaps and bounds as well, and the capabilities then and what you can do.
And frankly, I've been doing most of the AI I've been doing for the last decade is computer vision.
Yeah,
And um it leads into, especially when looking at the face,
yeah,
it leads into some really non-technical ethical debates. I know more about privacy law than
yeah,
any technology guy in the history of the world, right? And I didn't want to, I just
yeah,
was forced to learn about privacy law.
yeah,
But like you said, I think the bold frontier of computer vision is not looking at the human or the face. Those are solve problems, and now they're in legal hassle. I
yeah,
think it's looking at objects. I mean, ultimately, I mentioned Moore's law again, but ultimately, our CPUs are going to be able to handle seeing and identifying everything,
yeah, yeah,
right? Where we don't have that type of power yet, where you could just take a picture of something and it would tell you everything in the scene. Of course, the metaphor I always use is, ultimately we'll be able to make a blind man see. A blind person will wear some type of glasses,
yeah,
and the software and hardware will be able to tell you everything that's out there. The
yeah,
problem is the UI, of course. How the human brain and the eye system is so freaking amazing.
yeah,
There is no way I can envision in software where you could deliver. Well, you should never say no way, right?
No.
Ultimately, somebody's going to have to figure out a UI that delivers what the computer sees in computer vision to the blind man,
Yeah.
because otherwise it'll be overwhelming,
Yeah. Yeah.
literally overwhelming. The other problem with the metaphor is we're not even close to having a lens that matches up to the human eye,
So yeah. Yeah.
camera lens.
Yeah.
Not even, we're eons away to even getting close to what the human eye can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But these are all interesting scientific and problems that the next many generations are going to solve.
And so, yeah, with that, like, from your CV experience, is what sort of deployment challenges have you seen? Like you said, it's great building this model, but what what's the hurdles that you've seen overcoming trying to get that into production? From that sort of testing experimentation phase.
Well, in all honesty, it isn't it wasn't the management part per se, because I put a lot of computer vision into production. At least I've been on teams that have done it for the last decade.
Yeah.
The biggest problem was the software architecture and the cloud versus edge thing.
Right. Right.
When I stumbled backwards, and you'd laugh because I was in a small conference room in building 42 in Redmond,
Yeah.
where all the Visual Studio people were, and this young PM named Anna Roth from this group called Cognitive Services at
Mm.
Microsoft did this presentation to me and a handful of other people about the computer vision they invented, and my jaw just dropped.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm like, okay, my life just changed. My company is now going to do this because it's so cool and exciting, and we did. The problem was, and you remember these days, it was Azure. It actually wasn't even called Azure, but it was cloud based, meaning your camera.
Yeah.
Say your camera's in HD, which is 30 frames per second. All
Mhm.
right.
Yeah.
Well, if you wanted real time analysis of what the computer is looking at, you've got to send 30 frames a second. Well, that's impossible.
Yeah.
They're 10 meg images.
Yeah.
Right? There's just not enough bandwidth.
Yeah.
And then you got to wait for Azure to crunch the image
Yeah.
and send back the result. Right? So that we had these huge, and then you had to deploy these things, which were life-saving pieces of software.
Yeah.
You had to deploy these things to third world countries
Yeah.
that just didn't have any bandwidth.
Yeah.
So it would, like, a few years later, same type of thing. I'm sitting in a room at Intel,
Yeah.
Small group of people, and they're describing their OpenVINO uh, computer vision software product, which is open source and it's edge based. Well,
Yeah.
then that changed my life.
Yeah.
But then you have the same problems. Once you go to the edge, then you guys come in.
Yeah.
Maintaining something at the edge. Oh my God, it's complicated.
Yeah.
And it's just ripe for failure. and and really, if you're treating it like a real piece of software where you're constantly improving it, you got to get those bits to the edge so
Yeah.
they can execute on the edge.
Yeah.
Um,
And
yeah.
that's we've
So there you go.
yeah. I mean, yeah, it sounds like I'm plugging everything we're doing, but yeah, we've got edge deployment worked out, ourselves, and we've got kind of tutorials for that. The part that we're on the cusp of, like you say, is that monitoring and processing at the edge, right? So, like you said, I've seen, I've been involved in projects where we did product recognition in fridges, right, and then also fresh produce in supermarkets. And yeah, you're right. I mean, that information and those images then are being sent over a mobile net, up to the cloud. And it wasn't so much the cost of the model and the implementation. The cost was the mobile costs of
Yeah, yeah.
sending that data
Interesting,
up to
right?
the cloud. And so where we are now with the power of the edge is we can do that processing at the edge, and do that monitoring and observability at the edge as well, so that you're not doing that round tripping, not just for the cost of the data, but then also the latency of sending data up and getting it back again, right?
Right, right. So you're fixing problems that I was pulling my hair out on like just 5, 6 years ago.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and now, honestly, I keep coming back to Moore's law, but back then we were just talking about the compute edge.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's also a case for the network edge, and ultimately we're going to be able to push some of these high-powered CPUs, especially these, like you mentioned, the Mac when we before we started. I don't know how to use a Mac either, but they have that magical M2 chip and the M3 chip coming, which are incredibly power saving. How do you say this? Energy compliant. They
yeah,
last forever.
yeah, yeah,
If you could move that type of CPU technology to the camera edge,
yeah,
holy cow, you could save some lives.
yeah,
You could really do some earth-shattering things, make the world better type of things.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And this, like you said, you talk about Moore's law. I mean, we've seen it, the power of those edge devices and that distributed, computing out, to edge AI scenarios is, it's becoming a reality now, right? It's
Yeah, it is amazing. Now, I do these keynotes. I'm at the stage of my career where I'm stuck with keynotes as opposed to really cool technical presentations. But I do this ethics of AI thing, and if I'm explaining to my wife or non-technical people who are watching the news and
yeah,
terrified of AI,
yeah,
you know, it is a legitimate concern that bad guys can do some bad things with these things.
yeah,
But you know what? Why is that different from any other point in time?
yeah,
You know, and of course, there's fear of jobs being replaced. Well, that's identically what happened in the Industrial Revolution.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and that worked out. Certainly, um, unless robots become cheap, people aren't going to be replaced anytime soon.
yeah, yeah. I've been watching. I watched a show on Disney about it was like the VW factory in Germany, and the robotic and how these robots, like they all are are edge enabled, and they can figure out certain safety things, but other elements within that process. But yeah, there comes a limit where it still can't do what a human. There's
I know the series you're talking about.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
my takeaway was from the Volkswagen people was, they're eliminating the tedious stuff from humans
yeah,
that is also susceptible to mistake.
yeah, yeah,
One of the coolest, most cool, I should say, computer vision projects I ever did was examining X-rays for a syndrome.
mm,
This bizarre, rare syndrome, but was fatal.
yeah,
And its only purpose in life was to give a heads up. It wasn't replacing doctors.
yeah,
It came back and said, I'm 75% confident that that is blah 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 syndrome.
yeah,
So the doctor was look, because a lot, humans can miss stuff, and
yeah,
frankly, there are physicians that are untrained to see this very rare syndrome that happens in utero that is 100% fatal to the fetus, but absolutely easily fixable if recognized. So, there you go. There's one of those great applications for why AI is going to help the world as opposed to destroy
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And again, yeah, we've just released a sort of tutorial for computer vision for health imaging. So we use it for recognizing the use case we have is like mitochondria, right? But
Okay.
yeah, whether it be cancer cells or other ailments or things like that, if we can recognize it, quicker, better, faster, that time to action for a patient and the health facility is super important, right? So days, hours, weeks count in that respect. Have you seen
Absolutely.
so have you seen like when you in that sort of production and people talk about MLOps, but you probably get 10 different answers from people, is like, what is MLOps? What are some of the best practices that you've seen, what works and what doesn't work in that process, the production,
I
if we have enough time?
yeah. But best, I just think this whole software thing has gone so fast
Yeah,
in the last 4 years that I just think in general, even technologists are catching up
yeah,
to, how to even implement this stuff.
yeah,
I mean, I think you guys are perfectly positioned to catch the wave of, holy shit, how do we maintain this thing? Right? There are very few outside of the big companies. I could be totally wrong, but it's my impression that as a group of technologists, we're not even there yet. We are not even there in understanding um, the implications of putting a machine learning model into production.
yeah.
The whole DevOps thing is crazy enough, right? Yeah. So that's my personal opinion. I could be totally wrong, and you could see my mission now. I'm in a startup with a bunch of creatives.
Yeah,
Just explaining how AI is going to help this thing
yeah,
is and how we have to turn into a software company now.
yeah, yeah.
You know, it is going to be fun, but it might be challenging at points.
Yeah, and I think we find that as well, and it's something we've sort of built into the DNA of the product is that integration with other investments. You look at all the software and vendors that are available to to ML in either ideation, experimentation, and then production, and then monitoring. It's making sure that you have something that can integrate, right? And yourself and experience that whenever you went to a customer and they're like, hey, use Microsoft, but you got to rip and replace that. The conversation usually ended at that point. And so integration with existing investments, not just for that, the software investment, but also the people habits. You don't have to retrain people if
Right.
you're
Good.
plugging something in that they're already familiar with that environment.
Good point. It would be really interesting for me, which means it'd be dramatically more interesting for you guys to pulse the Fortune 1000 and get an honest answer from the CTO of the entire Fortune 1000.
Mhm.
Do you know what ML ops is?
Yeah, yeah,
I'd be curious to hear. My guess would be half of them would have never heard of it.
yeah,
Right? That'd be my guess, but that would be really, which means you guys are perfectly poised once everyone figures out, "Holy cow, we need this stuff."
yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's it's our founder. He comes from the financial sector, New York, and so it's not just that integration, but the other element is inferencing. The speed, the compute power, the inferencing, because you've seen, especially with computer vision, like the size of these models, and the inferencing. If you're batch or streaming, that latency and is just that can add to success or failure in some cases.
Yeah, we're back to software architecture.
Yeah,
As a young man, I used to do all these predictions, and some of them came true and some of them didn't. And one was, I hung with this group of Microsoft regional directors who are all brilliant software architects. So on the bar, I used to say, "You guys know that you're dinosaurs, right? You're going to be replaced. We're
yeah,
going to get software architecture for free.
yeah,
It's just a matter of time." I used to, taunt these guys that I love so much, guys and gals, and they'd go, "Oh," they'd freak out, but I was wrong. We still need software architecture.
yeah,
Certainly in a CRUD app, I'm guessing that we're going to be able to ask GPT and some of the other large learning models, hey, give me a software architecture for a CRUD app to maintain I don't know, a dog database,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it'll give you, I don't know, ASP.NET or
yeah,
Ruby or whatever the heck,
yeah,
some type of JavaScript framework. and give you all the code and set it up, like Microsoft Copilot type stuff. But for complex things like this, we're not there yet. We're not close. We're not even close.
Yeah.
You know, it's still going to take some work to get these things into production and to maintain them. And that's fine. That's good.
Yeah.
That's great. The fact we can do it is great.
And do you see that, like, do you see silos, when you go into these companies of, the DevOps people don't talk to the MLEs, or the MLEs are not communicating with the data scientists?
You're leading me like a puppy again, Martin. Yeah, that hasn't changed much, has it? We used to, back in the old days, me and you, because you have gray hair too, we used to call them network Nazis because getting something into production was impossible. You had to
Yeah.
get through the network. Well, that hasn't changed much. That there's the bold promise of the next generation of software people is, a truly um, symbiotic team where all one goal and all complementary, and one is not freaking out because of some potential security threat, or we're getting better. And frankly, we're back to tools, plumbing, and platform. The tools, plumbing, and platform are so much better these days that will facilitate better communication.
Yeah.
Like before my Microsoft days, I worked at a company where they literally put you in a room for 2 years.
Right.
You
Right.
didn't talk to anybody. You just had a spec this big, right? You
Yeah.
remember those days. You went in a room for 2 years and you built a piece of software and you came out and you said, "Here it is."
Yeah.
And they said, "Wait a minute, that's not what we wanted." Yeah. Yeah. Communication, Martin. It's always going to be a tricky thing with humans.
It is. Yeah. I think, breaking down those silos and those, barriers, and, it's not, the data scientists, building a model. It's not a case of like throwing it over the fence, to the MLE. It's bring them together, and that drives efficiencies, right? That gets your model to production faster. The software is one element, but like you said before, you can have all the best software in the world, but if the people aren't communicating, then it just breaks down, right?
But when you do get there, man, it's super fun.
Yeah.
An efficient team, an efficient company
Yeah.
where you're going so fast
Yeah.
and putting in things into production so fast with
Yeah.
so much efficiency. God, the adrenaline rush is
Yeah.
is uh is really super
Yeah.
super fun and rewarding. Yeah.
It's one thing, actually, just I know we're kind of almost at time, but one thing we talked about briefly before we started recording was you talked about Copilot, and you've touched on GPT-3 as well. Like, how do you see that sort of AI element, coming into the MLOps space for helping speed up people building models, or building processes or other tools to accelerate that outcome?
Yeah. So I should probably say that Copilot term is Microsoft's branding
Yeah.
for the natural language interface
Yeah.
to AI. So, we were talking before about, some keynote demos I recently saw at the Microsoft Build conference, and my jaw just dropped. And it's more than just, hey, build me a piece of software. It's in Excel and saying, build me, I don't know what a pivot table is, build me one and report this data I have that you think would be most effective to a middle level manager in the automobile industry, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And suddenly Excel starts it literally eliminating the need to know the user interface in any of the Office products.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then you step back and you think like, okay, most of us who use Word and Excel probably use 10% of the functionality,
Yeah.
and the menus are intimidating, but that natural language interface is a complete paradigm shift for the way we work.
Yeah.
And it's going to be tough for people like me and you to just get out of searching through menus
Yeah.
for, and talking to the software. I mean, that's going to be a tough learning curve. I don't
Yeah.
know if that answers your question, but that was my takeaway. Like, holy cow, this is like the industrial revolution of software.
It,
If
it
we
is.
really do, if we really are going to talk to our computers,
Yeah.
You were joking how you still reach up at your Macintosh to
Yeah.
touch.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. I love that. Well, that it's going to be the same type of strange thing. Like, wait a minute, I'm not clicking on menus and stuff. I'm
Yeah.
talking to the software.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that super interesting.
Yeah, I think yeah, it's an important point. And when you were talking there, it kind of took me back to, when just the advent of the cloud, like, we're old enough to remember pre-cloud days, but we used to, there was two sets of people. There was ones that were, they'll embrace the new technologies and the new changes, and they'll get over that uncomfortableness and become comfortable with it. The other camp is the people are in denial almost. They'll dig their heels in and go,
Yeah.
no, I'm happy here. I'm going to do this, and they'll unfortunately be the ones that will get left by further and further behind as the people that adopt that will move forward.
It is funny, back to the Fortune 1000, that there are a handful of them that totally missed the cloud thing.
Yeah.
Which simply means they paid a lot more money than they should have in running their business. That net, the cloud is a cheap, granted. Do we have three cloud providers now? But the two big cloud providers, they have the heroin model. Once you get in there, it's hard to get out. And as cloud costs rise, then you start looking back, which many companies are doing. Start looking backwards at bringing it back home again,
Yeah.
because it's all about cost to run the thing
Yeah.
and efficiency, which leads back to you guys again, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Maybe in another conversation, I'll show you some of our inferencing where our costs for inferencing are actually going down, because of the
yeah, I'd love to see that.
we'll
Yeah.
save that for another day. But
Okay.
Tim, I want to respect your time. I really appreciate you, joining me. I know you're very busy, and with a new startup and everything else that you've going on. So really appreciate you carving out some of your time.
Absolutely my pleasure. Anytime. It was super fun talking to you.
You too, you too, and hopefully, yeah, maybe once you get into the product with a new company, it will come you back and maybe you can have show us a demo or something like that.
Love it. Love to. Thanks, Martin.
All right,
Talk soon.
all right. Cheers. Bye bye.
Bye.